Emily stood frozen on the front steps, her belongings scattered across the driveway like broken pieces of her dignity. Clothes, books, even her worn-out shoes were tossed into the street. On top of the pile, a framed photograph of her late father slid forward, almost falling to the ground. She lunged forward, clutching it tightly to her chest, her eyes stinging with tears. Vanessa stood in the doorway, her arms crossed, her face twisted in anger. Her voice carried across the neighborhood, sharp and merciless. "You're nothing but a parasite, Emily. You've been living off us for far too long. This is my house now, and I won't have you freeloading here another day." Emily's lips trembled, but no words came out. The pain in her chest grew heavier as she looked around. Several neighbors had gathered outside, whispering, their curious eyes fixed on the scene. Emily could feel their judgment pressing down on her. But worse than that was the humiliation of being treated like an unwanted guest in the very home she had grown up in. Vanessa's voice rose even louder, making sure everyone heard. "Pack up and go back to wherever you came from. You don't belong here." Emily lowered her gaze, her arms tightening around her father's photograph. She wanted to scream, to shout the truth that would silence Vanessa instantly. Because the truth was simple, undeniable. The house wasn't Vanessa's. It wasn't even David's. Their father had left it to Emily. She was the rightful owner. But instead of speaking, she swallowed the words burning in her throat. Her silence was heavy, like chains around her heart. She thought of her brother, David, Vanessa's husband, the boy she once shared late-night snacks and childhood secrets with. He was inside, watching but not stopping it. Emily could almost feel his shadow in the window, standing still, pretending he couldn't hear his wife's cruel words. Vanessa sneered, taking one final step forward, her finger pointing like a weapon. "Don't come crawling back here again. This is our home, not yours." Emily's knees weakened, but she didn't let herself fall. She held onto the photograph as if her father himself were giving her strength through it. Her father's smile in that frame was her reminder of the love she once had, the love that had protected her when no one else did. The neighbors shook their heads, some pitying her, some smirking at the drama. Emily gathered the strength to bend down, picking up a few scattered things and hugging them to her chest. She didn't say a word to Vanessa. She didn't defend herself. She simply turned away, her face pale, her heart aching. The dramatic irony hung in the air. Everyone believed Vanessa. Everyone thought Emily was helpless, homeless, defeated. But only Emily knew the truth. She held the keys to the very house she was being thrown out of. She just never told anyone. And as she walked away, her silence raised the one question that no one could answer yet. Why would she allow this cruelty when she had the power to end it? And what would she do next? Emily grew up as the quiet, responsible daughter. While other children shouted, argued, or demanded attention, she was the one who listened, who helped, who stayed in the background. Her father loved this about her. He often told her, "Emily, you're my steady one. You keep this family together." And she believed him, because whenever her father smiled at her, she felt safe and seen. But her mother's eyes never lit up in the same way. Her mother's heart leaned toward David, Emily's older brother. David was wild, loud, and careless, yet their mother excused everything he did. If he lost money gambling, she gave him more. If he stayed out late drinking, she defended him. "He's just young and figuring things out," she would say, even when he was no longer young. Emily learned early that love in her family was uneven. She worked hard in school, helped around the house, stayed polite and patient. Still, most of the praise and attention went to David. She never complained. She thought her turn would come one day, if she just kept being good. As the years passed, David only grew more reckless. He wasted money, lied about debts, and leaned on his family to clean up the mess. Their father, though patient, grew tired. Emily saw the disappointment in his face each time David failed. Deep down, she knew her father hoped David would change, but he never did. When their father grew sick, Emily was the one who cared for him. She took time off work, cooked his meals, managed his medicine, and sat by his side when the nights grew long. David rarely came, and when he did, it was usually to ask for money. Their father didn't say much, but Emily noticed how his eyes softened when she entered the room, and how they hardened when David left it. After he passed, the truth came out in the will. Their father had left the house he built with his own hands, the house where Emily's childhood memories still lived. Not to David but to Emily. She remembered sitting at the lawyer's office, her hands trembling as she held the document. She thought for a moment about how shocked David would be, how angry Vanessa would become. But then she folded the paper quietly and made a decision. She wouldn't say a word. She couldn't bear to humiliate her brother. She told herself, what's mine is his too. I can share. So she let David and Vanessa move into the house with her. She didn't ask for rent. She didn't even set rules. She thought maybe kindness could heal the rift between them. Vanessa, however, didn't see Emily's silence as kindness. To her, it was weakness. Vanessa was sharp-tongued, always ready with a cutting remark. From the beginning, she made it clear she didn't like sharing the house. She mocked Emily for being single at 28, asking her at family dinners, "When are you finally going to get married? Or do you plan to live here forever, like a shadow?" Every insult stung, but Emily held it in. She told herself it wasn't worth fighting. She convinced herself Vanessa's words didn't matter, even as they cut her deeper each day. At the hospital where she worked as a nurse, Emily was the opposite of how she was treated at home. Patients adored her gentle care. Her colleagues admired her patience, and even the toughest doctors respected her calm under pressure. She was known for staying late to comfort a scared child, or buying lunch for a patient who had no money. She gave so much of herself to others, yet at home, she returned to coldness and scorn. David rarely defended her. He stayed quiet when Vanessa insulted Emily. Sometimes he even avoided Emily's eyes, as though ashamed but unwilling to act. Emily held on to the hope that one day he would remember their childhood closeness, the nights they used to whisper stories under the covers. But the man who once protected her was now the man who let her be humiliated in silence. The stakes grew clearer with every passing day. Emily endured, holding on to her father's memory, holding on to the house as the last gift of love he had given her. Yet that same house had become the place of her deepest pain. Each night, as she lay awake in her small room, she asked herself the same question. How long can I keep enduring this? She had the power to change everything with a single sentence. This house is mine. But to say it would be to betray her brother, to reveal a truth that could shatter whatever fragile bond they still had. So Emily chose silence. And in that silence lived all her suffering, her endurance, her kindness, and her heartbreak. Vanessa accused Emily of living off them, and not contributing enough. Her voice was sharp, echoing across the dining table, cutting through the clinking of cutlery. Emily had just served herself a small spoon of rice when the words landed, making her freeze. You think it's fair? Vanessa pressed on, glaring. You work as a nurse, yet you still can't even pay proper rent here. You eat our food, you use our electricity, and what do we get in return? Nothing. Emily set her spoon down carefully, her hands trembling. She opened her mouth to speak, her voice soft. I do help. I buy groceries, Vanessa slammed her hand on the table, making the dishes rattle. Groceries? Please. A few apples and bread once in a while? That's nothing compared to what you take. You're almost 30 years old, Emily. Don't you think it's time you stopped depending on other people? Emily's cheeks burned. She wanted to tell the truth, to shout that it wasn't their house at all, that she was the one who allowed them to stay there. But when she turned her eyes to David, her brother, he was staring down at his plate, avoiding her gaze. David, Emily whispered, her voice breaking, say something. But David stayed silent, chewing slowly as if he hadn't heard. Vanessa leaned back in her chair, a cruel smile playing on her lips. Of course he won't say anything. Because he knows I'm right. You've overstayed your welcome. Enough is enough. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. Emily could barely breathe. She pressed her palms together, trying to hold back tears. I've never asked for much. Before she could finish, Vanessa grabbed her plate and hurled it onto the floor. It shattered into pieces, the sound sharp like thunder in the quiet room. Emily jumped back in shock, her heart pounding. Tomorrow, Vanessa shouted, her face red with fury. I want you gone by tomorrow. I will not share this house with you another day. Emily's eyes instantly darted to David again, begging him with her gaze. She didn't want to believe her brother would allow this. She needed him to defend her, just once. But David finally spoke, his words barely above a mutter, his face still lowered. Maybe it's for the best, Emily. The room went silent, except for the ringing in Emily's ears. Her chest tightened as if the ground beneath her had vanished. She had expected cruelty from Vanessa, but from her brother, her own brother, it was a knife to the heart. She swallowed hard, pushing back from the table. No words could come. If she tried to speak, her voice would break into sobs. She quietly rose, walked to her room, and shut the door behind her. That night, Emily sat on her bed in the dim light. Her small room looked emptier than ever. On the desk lay a drawer, and inside it, wrapped in an envelope, was the truth she had hidden for years. Her father's will. With shaking hands, she pulled it out and opened it once more. The familiar words stared back at her. Her father's handwriting, his signature, the clear statement that the house belonged to her. She traced the letters with her fingers, tears spilling down her cheeks. She could end this now. One word, one document, and Vanessa would have no power over her. David would be speechless. The neighbors would know the truth. But Emily sat there in silence, clutching the will against her chest the same way she had held her father's photograph earlier. Her heart ached, not because of Vanessa's cruelty, but because of David's betrayal. The boy she once trusted more than anyone had chosen his wife over his sister. She lay down on her bed, staring at the ceiling, the tears sliding into her hair. Her silence had always been her shield. Now it felt like her prison. And in that dark room, with the will pressed against her heart, the question burned deeper than ever. How much longer could she endure this? Emily moved out temporarily to a friend's small apartment. The place was cramped, with only one bedroom and a couch where she often slept, but it felt safer than staying under Vanessa's roof. Even so, she couldn't shake the heaviness in her chest. She packed only a few clothes and her father's framed photograph, leaving most of her things behind. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Vanessa's face twisted in anger, and David sitting quietly beside her, saying nothing. At work, Emily forced herself to smile. She greeted her patients kindly, adjusted pillows, changed 4 drips, and listened to their worries. To everyone else, she was the same gentle nurse they had always known. Patient, caring, dependable. But inside she felt hollow. Her heart ached every time she went back to her friend's apartment and remembered the house that was rightfully hers. Her colleague Rachel, who was around the same age, noticed something was wrong. One afternoon during their lunch break, Rachel leaned closer and whispered, "Emily, you can't keep pretending you're fine. I can see it in your eyes. What's going on?" Emily hesitated. She wasn't used to sharing her burdens, but Rachel's voice was warm, and she couldn't hold everything in anymore. "It's family," Emily admitted softly. "They treat me like I don't belong. Like I'm a burden." Rachel frowned. "That's not right. You give so much to everyone. You deserve respect too. Don't let them trample all over you." Emily smiled weakly but said nothing more. She couldn't tell Rachel the whole truth, not yet. The shame of her silence, of letting Vanessa humiliate her, was too heavy. Meanwhile, back at the house, Vanessa and David seemed to celebrate Emily's absence. They began hosting loud parties, filling the rooms with laughter, music, and expensive drinks. Neighbors came and went, and Vanessa made sure everyone knew the story, her version of it. "She was freeloading off us," Vanessa told anyone who would listen. "We were generous, but enough is enough. She never contributed a thing, just sat around acting like a victim. We finally asked her to leave. It was for her own good." Some neighbors nodded in agreement, others whispered among themselves, but the damage was done. The lies spread quickly. Soon Emily noticed people looking at her differently when she passed them on the street. Some avoided her, others gave her pitying glances. Each look cut her deeper, reminding her of how powerless she had made herself by staying silent. One evening, Emily returned to the house quietly to collect a few things she had left behind. As she walked up the driveway, she heard Vanessa's voice drifting through the open window. She froze and listened. "I think it's time we sold this place," Vanessa said to a group of friends. "David and I deserve something bigger, more modern. This house has served its purpose, but I want to move into a nicer neighborhood. Somewhere we can really show who we are." Emily's stomach twisted. She gripped the strap of her bag tightly, her breath caught in her throat. They wanted to sell it? Her father's house? The place where she had grown up, where every wall and every corner carried his memory. Her heart pounded as she stepped back into the shadows, afraid of being seen. The thought of losing the last gift her father had given her felt unbearable. She wanted to burst through the door, throw the will on the table, and shout, "This is mine. You have no right." But her feet stayed rooted to the ground. When she finally walked away, her eyes blurred with tears, Emily felt the full weight of her silence. Her decision to protect David had come at the cost of everything. Her dignity, her peace, even her father's legacy. That night, in her friend's apartment, she sat on the couch staring at the will again. The paper was creased now from how many times she had unfolded it, but the words were still clear. She was the owner. She always had been. Her hands trembled as she whispered to herself, "If I say something now, David will be humiliated. He'll hate me forever." But another voice inside her pushed back. "If you say nothing, they'll take everything from you. They'll erase your father's gift like it never mattered." The conflict tore her apart. She still loved her brother, even after his betrayal. She remembered the boy who once shielded her from bullies, who once shared candy with her when they had nothing else. But that boy was gone, replaced by a man who let his wife crush her spirit without a word of defense. Emily lay awake late into the night, staring at the ceiling. Every choice felt like a wound. If she exposed the truth, she would save the house but lose her brother. If she stayed silent, she would lose everything: her home, her dignity, her father's memory. The silence that had once kept peace was now choking her. And soon, she knew, she would have to decide. Vanessa and David sat at the dining table with a real estate agent, papers spread out in front of them. The agent, a tall man in a neat suit, was explaining prices and possibilities. "This house could sell for a good amount," he said with a smile. "Especially with the market right now. You'll be able to afford something much bigger, just like you want." Vanessa's eyes sparkled with greed. She leaned toward David. "Finally, we can move out of this old place and into the kind of home we deserve." David nodded weakly, though his eyes looked uncertain. He wasn't as excited as Vanessa, but he didn't dare disagree with her. Just then the front door creaked open. Everyone turned their heads. Emily stepped inside, her hands shaking slightly but her face calm. She clutched a folder against her chest. Behind her, a few curious neighbors had gathered, drawn in by the agent's car and the idea of a house being sold. Vanessa's smile dropped the moment she saw Emily. "What are you doing here?" she snapped. "You don't live here anymore. Get out before I call the police." Emily didn't flinch. She walked slowly to the table, her voice steady. "I'm here because I need to tell the truth." The room fell quiet. The neighbors outside pressed closer to the windows, whispering. The agent looked confused, glancing between them. Emily set the folder down on the table and pulled out 2 documents. "This house," she said clearly, "was never yours to sell. It belongs to me. My father left it to me in his will." For a moment, silence hung in the air. Then Vanessa laughed bitterly. "What kind of nonsense is this? You're desperate, that's all. Making up stories because you're jealous we're moving on." Emily slid the papers across the table toward the agent. "These aren't stories. This is the will. And this," she pulled out another paper, her hand trembling slightly, "is the title deed with my name on it. Check them yourself." The agent frowned, adjusting his glasses as he picked up the documents. His eyes scanned the papers carefully. The room was so quiet that everyone could hear the faint rustle of the pages. Finally he looked up, his face serious. "She's telling the truth. The property is in Emily's name. She is the legal owner." The words fell like stones. David's face went pale. Vanessa's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Then suddenly she exploded. "No. This is a trick. She forged those papers. She must have lied somehow. This is our house." The agent shook his head firmly. "No, ma'am. These documents are legitimate. This house does not belong to you or your husband. It belongs to her." The neighbors outside gasped, whispering louder. Some even shook their heads in disbelief. David's hands trembled as he finally looked at Emily, his voice weak. "All this time, you own the house? You let us live here for free." Emily's eyes filled with tears, but her voice was steady. She looked straight at him, ignoring Vanessa's rage. "Yes. I didn't want to embarrass you. I thought, if I stayed quiet, maybe you'd feel safe here. Maybe we could live in peace." Her voice cracked slightly, but she pressed on. "I never wanted to take anything from you, David. But you let her take everything from me." The words hit him harder than any shout ever could. His shoulders slumped, his eyes wide with guilt. "Emily, I didn't know. I should have stopped her. I should have. Vanessa cut him off, her voice shrill. Don't you dare blame me. You're pathetic, David. You let your sister walk all over us, and now you're falling for her lies. But David didn't defend her this time. He buried his face in his hands, shaking, the weight of his choices crushing him. Vanessa's face twisted with fury as she realized the truth was undeniable. The neighbors were staring. The agent was closing his folder, no longer interested in her lies. With a scream of frustration, she grabbed her purse and stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind her. The room was left in silence. David sat broken at the table, his tears falling freely. Emily stood tall, holding the documents close to her chest. For the first time in years, she felt the strength of her father's love standing beside her. The truth was out. The house was hers, and nothing could take that away again. Emily reclaims her home, finally walking through the front door with her head held high. The air inside felt different this time, not heavy with shame or tension, but light, almost welcoming. She ran her fingers gently along the wall, remembering her childhood, remembering her father's laughter echoing through the halls. For the first time in years, she felt like she truly belonged. David stood near the staircase, his face pale, his shoulders slouched. He looked smaller than she had ever seen him, like a boy who had lost his way. His eyes were red from crying, and when he finally spoke, his voice cracked. Emily, I'm so sorry, he whispered. I should have protected you. I let her control everything, and I didn't stand by you when you needed me most. I don't deserve your forgiveness. Emily's heart ached at the sight of him, but she also felt a strength rising inside her, one she had never allowed herself to feel before. She took a deep breath and said softly, I forgive you, David. You're my brother, and I'll always love you. But forgiveness doesn't mean things can go back to the way they were. David's eyes widened. What do you mean? She held her ground. You cannot live here anymore. Not until you learn to respect me. Not until you prove that you can stand on your own 2 feet without letting someone else tear me down. This house is my father's last gift to me. I won't let it become a place of pain again. David looked as if her words pierced him, but he nodded slowly, tears streaming down his cheeks. He understood. News spread quickly. Vanessa, furious that her carefully crafted lies had crumbled, packed her things and left without looking back. Days later, Emily heard through neighbors that she had filed for divorce, blaming David for embarrassing her in front of everyone. For Vanessa, the humiliation was too much to bear. Emily, however, felt something she hadn't felt in years, peace. She spent the first few days cleaning the house, opening the windows wide, letting the fresh air in. Each sweep of the broom, each polished surface, felt like she was washing away the shadows of the past. One evening, Emily decided to do something she had always wanted but never dared: host her own dinner. She invited Rachel from work, a few kind neighbors who had always shown quiet support, and even her friend who had offered her the small apartment when she was homeless. When they arrived, the house was warm with light. The dining table, once a place of conflict and tears, now shone with laughter, clinking glasses, and the smell of home-cooked food. Emily sat at the head of the table, her heart swelling with gratitude. For once, she wasn't the quiet woman sitting in the corner, enduring insults. She was the host, the center, the one who had reclaimed her dignity. Rachel raised her glass and smiled. To Emily, she said, for finding her strength and her voice. Everyone cheered, and Emily felt her cheeks warm, but this time not from shame, from pride. She realized then that her silence had been both her shield and her prison. Breaking it was terrifying, but it had set her free. She didn't need Vanessa's approval. She didn't need David's excuses. She only needed her own voice, and the courage to use it. The quiet woman had finally spoken. And in that moment, she knew she would never be silenced again. Emily sits on the porch at sunset, the sky painted in soft shades of gold and orange. She holds her father's framed photograph gently in her lap, her fingers tracing the edge of the wooden frame, as if it were his hand. The evening air is calm, the kind of silence that feels safe rather than heavy. For the first time in a long while, she doesn't feel like an outsider in her own home. She feels like she belongs. Her eyes glisten as she looks down at the familiar smile in the photograph. I kept your promise, Dad, she whispers softly. I finally chose myself. A tear slips down her cheek, But it doesn't sting like the ones before. This one feels lighter, almost cleansing. She wipes it away and lets a small smile grow on her face. It's not the smile of someone pretending to be fine. It's the smile of someone who has survived and finally found peace. The house behind her glows with the soft light of lamps, no longer filled with anger or harsh words. Instead, it feels warm again, almost alive, like it did when her father was still there. She thinks about all the nights she cried alone, clutching the will, too afraid to speak up. And now here she is, stronger, braver, no longer trapped by silence. Emily takes a deep breath, letting the fresh evening air fill her lungs. She closes her eyes for a moment and feels her father's presence around her, as if he's sitting right beside her, proud and at peace. As the last bit of sunlight fades, she stands, carrying the photograph inside. She walks slowly to the front door, pausing for a moment. She turns the key in the lock, the sound gentle but firm. This time, she doesn't lock it out of fear of being thrown out. She locks it with a quiet sense of peace, knowing the house is truly hers, her safe place, her home. And with that, Emily steps away, her heart lighter than it has been in years. Hey friends, thank you so much for watching till the end. Don't forget to like, drop a comment, and hit that subscribe button for more stories. See you in the next one. Bye.